and inspiring than a triple espresso. That's the blurb from Jessie Kornbluth. I think it says everything. So with that, I wanted to ask Bev to start by giving us a short reading from Disassembly Required.
Absolutely. So I thought I'd just read quickly sort of the moment that everything changed. And I think that's pretty much, what's happened to us lately is that all of a sudden our life changed kind of in a moment. But I mean, for me, it was literally crystallized in this particular moment in my life. So my ex was named Jake, so just to give you some context. The night before, I'd worried when Jake hadn't come home until after midnight. I'd phoned the salon where he told me he was going for a massage after work, but they said he never showed up. When he got home, he refused to tell me where he'd been. Restless, I awoke early, the house quiet, my husband and children still slumbering. As I walked downstairs, my eyes were drawn to his brown suede jacket in the vestibule. Feeling like a thief, I reached inside the pockets, drew out his cell phone, and carried it to the kitchen, shaking. I brewed a pot of coffee, conscious to place a moment between what I feared might be on that phone and whatever came next. And then I sat down at the kitchen table, picked up his cell phone, and perked up my ears to hear if my powering it on had woken anybody up. My husband and I had had problems in our marriage, but we'd worked through so many of them, or so I believed. I hadn't dreamed he was having an affair. He'd saved only 2 numbers, one for his brother, the other for a female lawyer he'd mentioned working with at his new job. No listing for me, his wife, or the children. The other woman held position 1. Outgoing and incoming calls and messages corresponded to her number. He hadn't created password protection, so I scrolled to voicemail and instantly heard a woman's voice I'd never heard before. The same voice, breathless, caressing, almost panting at times, repeated itself over and over as I paged forward. I love you. Call me at home. Not sure what time it is, the voice said. My hand trembled. I grabbed a pen and stray envelope and copied down snippets as fast as I could, writing the words down to keep a heartbeat's distance away from falling apart. I love you with all my heart. My heart is hurting. I inhaled my tears and stuffed my wails inside so the children 1 floor above wouldn't hear. Hey, sweetie, me. It's 5:30 in the morning, and needless to say, I can't sleep. Want to come over here tomorrow and have a little time to be private instead of meeting at the office, the voice continued. Fear exploded in my chest. I couldn't swallow. I wanted to bolt the doors and keep my family in suspended animation, safe and rolled up in their covers, until I could figure out what to do next.
Okay. That scene that you just read, in which you make that shocking discovery that your husband is having an affair, is actually just the tip of the iceberg, because, and it happened, I guess we should say, 18 years ago now, right? But it wasn't until 6 years later that you finally got divorced, unwillingly, in your case. Can you tell us the story of all that? How, you absolutely resisted the divorce, and there's a lot there to tell.
Yes, well, obviously I was completely in a fog, as I have been, initially with what happened recently. I just never imagined that he would be having an affair. He left pretty soon after that. We had gone to therapy. He had said that he would call the affair off, but actually he didn't, and he was seeing the other woman behind my back. And about 6 weeks after that, not even 6 weeks after that happened, he was gone. He moved out to a new apartment. He was gone. I had knee surgery like 3 months before. I was still recovering. All of a sudden I had these 2 girls to raise, and he filed for divorce. So I got a lawyer, and I remember my lawyer telling me, people don't fight divorce. In New York, you could at the time because they hadn't codified no-fault divorce yet. But, we had been going to therapy, and our therapist said, I don't care about the affair. There's still stuff between you that I see worth saving. I had been married for 20 years. For me, my husband breaking his vows didn't mean that mine were unimportant. I still wanted to keep mine. I really felt that we could hold the marriage together. So did our therapist. And I really thought that our family was going to suffer. It wasn't worth just saying, okay, fine, go, and it's over and end it. I thought that it would be bad for the children. It would be bad for the whole family. It turned out to be pretty painful and pretty awful. So at some point I decided that there were all these lies that were being hurled against me in court, and I decided that I was going to fight the divorce. The first part of it was really to save my marriage. I really had grown up. No one in my family had ever been divorced. I had actually seen people who had gone through many, many difficult times in their marriage, and I had actually seen people come back together and repair their relationships. So I was brought up that way, and I actually saw it modeled in my own extended family, so that I knew that it could happen. And I saw people go on and be even stronger afterwards. And that's what I'd hoped would happen for me. Ultimately, it didn't happen. And I remember at one point, it's my mother's birthday today, by the way. She passed 4 years ago, which was another hard thing after selling my house and all the things that I went through that I cover in my book. Then my mother passed away, and nothing prepared me for that. But going through with the litigation in New York, I remember the night before the trial was supposed to start. I had called her and I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, I don't want to give you advice because you need to make your own decision. But I will tell you one thing. Think about this. Think about the future and whether you'll be able to live with yourself. If you just say, fine, give in to whatever your husband wants and settle, and at that time, the house was supposed to be sold. That was part of it. He wanted the house sold. Can you live with that decision? If you can live with that decision, fine. If you don't think that you can live with the decision to just give up on your marriage, give up on your house and all of that, then go forward. And I knew right then and there that that was the key. I knew that I had to see it as far as possible, if it was possible to save the marriage and then to save my home. And I have never regretted that since, because I feel like I have a really clear conscience about it. And ultimately, it made me a lot stronger. It made me realize how strong I had always been. So I think it was very important for me to have actually gone through that and really recover my strength and remember that about myself. So there were 6 long years of litigation. It was really in and out of court all the time. And while raising kids, while having 2 more knee surgeries, while taking care of a house that was falling apart, all of the above.
Brooklyn Brownstones. But the interesting thing was that because New York did not have no-fault divorce, he had to sue you, and you felt wrongly accused, and you fought it, and you wanted to preserve that marriage. And he somewhat, I think, disingenuously went through this therapy that you said that actually sort of solidified his bond with the other woman. But ultimately, yes, he evaded it all by moving to New Jersey, where there was no-fault divorce, and got the divorce there. So
he actually got
interesting. I'm so glad that you went through it. Just, I guess.
I am. And we got the divorce in New York because I would have had to then get an attorney in New Jersey. It's all very complicated. I had met him actually at our first job, my first job out of law school. So I had been a lawyer.
Both lawyers. We should have said
both
that.
Lawyers. Yeah.
2 lawyers walk into a bar.
Okay. But I had never imagined this. I didn't go into court, but I didn't know a thing about family law. I was very idealistic. I thought family law, it's the family court. They're protecting the family. Totally green. Didn't matter that I'd been a corporate lawyer. I was totally walking into something I didn't have a clue about. And basically they were kind of playing the game. I wasn't playing a game. So,
yeah. And I know he really engaged hardball attorneys. So, and ultimately moved away. So, So, but then the big victory you had is you got the house. And
I got the house.
The house is a character itself in your story. It seems to be, I hesitate to use the word like a plague upon you because given our current circumstances, but it really at times seems almost like that. At one point there are dust mites or bird mites in your air conditioning unit.
Bird mites.
That was another thing you clung to. Talk about, can you speak to that a little and what the house meant to you? Why did you feel so desperate?
Well, I had a therapist had told me early on, she said, keep things as stable as you can. And so I never forgot that. And I thought, well, he had moved like 10 times over the course of like 10 years. And I thought, well, keeping things as stable as possible for the kids means if I can keep them in their house. Our neighbors were wonderful. I can keep them in their schools, in their neighborhood, the church. That will give some stability to our lives. And it was important for me to have some stability as well. So, plus it was our home. I mean, so many things were just, taken away from us because we had no choice. And I thought, well, maybe we can at least keep our home. And I really think it was important initially that we were in the house, that we had, the kids could come home from school and be in their home and sleep in the same room, at night. And if it was possible to do, and I did manage to hang on to it for many years. I turned the downstairs into a rental and became a landlord. I see one of the people online here that we have these awful temp jobs, and yet I'm laughing about it because I met some great people and we made the best of it. This was a time in 2008, that was the crash. That was the last crash, if you all remember. And 2009, my divorce was final. Well, what also happened at this exact same time is that the legal market crashed. So I had not worked as a lawyer in many years, but the legal market crashed and so many people coming out of law school, they couldn't find jobs. And there were other people who lost their jobs, lawyers looking toward retirement, but they didn't have the years in to retire yet, all thrown out of jobs. And so there were all these temp jobs. And that's basically what we did to kind of survive and pay the bills, is go to these absolutely awful temp jobs and kind of commiserate together. So anyway, the house, as Lorraine was saying, like the house is, I didn't have a lot of money to repair. And so I learned how to use a hammer. I learned how to change those cushions on the chairs. If things were loose, I could fix them. And I had a great handyman. I was renting out a part of the house, but there were constant breakdowns. I mean, this is a 4-story house built in the late 1800s that needed repairing before the marriage ended. And it was one thing after the next, leaks, floods in the basement, and as Lorraine said, there's, I call it the invasion of the bird mites. And a lot of people say, like, what are bird mites? It's when birds actually are nesting and they build a nest. And with the nest, there are all of these little insects called bird mites. They got into the nest. And of course, these old houses, you have units in the window for air conditioning, got into my air conditioner, went through the air conditioner and into my bedroom, onto my bed. It was a nightmare to get rid of.
Sounds like perfect breeding ground for a novel coronavirus of some future year or something. It's
well, I won't belabor this story, but I was like, well, how am I going to get rid of them? And I called, looked in the yellow pages, and one of these big companies, okay, and this guy came in, he's going to fix it, whatever. And these things, they jump all over you and they attach to you. So he was trying to fix it and they were jumping all out of here. And he looked at me, he was freaking out. And he said, lady, I am out of here. And he ran 4 stories down and out of the house and left, never came back.
Terminator see it all. So that tells you something. Wow, that's incredible. So so how do you I mean, what do you think got you through it exactly? I mean, one foot in front of the other, but I alluded earlier to this sort of spiritual practice that you I think around that time were starting to get involved with, yes, and even around the time that your husband and you.
I think that, I had started meditation classes a couple of years before he left. And I really think that if I hadn't done that, it would have been much, much harder. So I had started that, and that was already part of my life and something that I could immediately continue. That was essential to me. That our church was close by. I had started going back to church. I hadn't been going to church for a long, long time. So I think, and that was community too. There was a really important community there for my girls and for me. So I think that part of it, plus just the community, was very important. Then I think it was just, I was on like adrenaline. I think I will have to say those two things, but then I was just on adrenaline for a long, long time. And you do what you have to do. I learned I was a fixer. I learned that I had to, if there was a problem, I had to fix it because there was no one else who was going to fix it. And I had these children to take care of. So I think you do what you have to do. I wrote a story for USA Today that was published last year, and there's a little portion of it in my book about early on contemplating suicide. I mean, it was.
I read that yesterday.
It was a thought that had never gone through my head in my life. And I found myself thinking about this and being really scared that I could think about this. Of course, I didn't tell a soul. I was in therapy. I wasn't going to tell my therapist. I was in court. My ex was, asking for custody. I didn't tell a friend. I didn't tell a soul. I dealt with this myself. We don't think that strong women who are accomplished, who have, been to law school and done all these things, they can possibly have these thoughts that the pain of what's going on can be so overwhelming that you can't even see any way out. But I think because of my meditation practice, and certainly because of my children, they needed me. What was going to happen to them if I wasn't there? That really got me through, knowing that I was responsible for those kids and they were sleeping one floor below me. That was the most important thing, I think, that got me through all those years.
Yeah. I think that, doing it alone like that and feeling that you just have the whole world on your shoulders can be just overwhelming. And I think you told me earlier in an email that what has surprised you, that you have positioned this book and the word midlife is in the subtitle, but that you've been surprised at how many men have come to your readings and related to the story and how many younger women. What have been some of the messages or what are some of the things they've said to you about what resonates for them?
Well, yeah, that totally surprised me that I've had some young women. And in fact, I was just at a reading in Pennsylvania. I went to my old alma mater back in November, and I was a reading at Barnes & Noble. And this woman, she's like a 20-year-old student, was coming up to me and talking with me about my book. When I came back, I had been accepted to the Savannah Book Festival and the local SCAD creative writing group. That's the college here. The young people, the women and the men, had selected my book as their first read. I was like, what? But I think that I think partly it's because they are struggling with their own things. I mean, I don't think they don't live in as carefree a world as I think I remember living in when I was 18, 19, going to college. I think they're facing so many other things that we didn't face. They've got huge debts. They don't know what kind of a world is going to be for them when they get out. Are they going to have jobs? What's happening to the environment? I think that it's a lot harder for them to navigate. And so they're looking for other people who have been through difficult situations, especially women, looking for other women to be their mentor and to say, well, how did you get through all this? What was your way? What was your path? So I was completely surprised, especially because, this whole, you've got to market your book now. That's a whole other thing. Like, how do I market? I'm not a marketer, I'm a writer. So I thought, well, okay, midlife kind of describes the book. So, because I thought up the title, I was completely surprised. I thought, well, that's going to turn off anyone, who's midlife and under. And it hasn't. I've been to some book clubs where there have been some younger women. And then I've been to other events where everybody's 70 plus. So that's, and that really made me think about when I talk about my book, I don't talk about it. It's not a divorce memoir. The precipitating event that changed my life overnight, that kind of threw me for a loop, was divorce. But it's not about, it's about divorce, yes, but it's not really about that. It's about loss. It's about loss, it's about grief, and it's about how do you start over when your whole world is just kind of blown apart? What do you do?
Well, I think we talked about that in the Q&A we did before, that you're almost, again, you're kind of the embodiment of this idea that NextTribe promotes of aging boldly, that you almost have started over, and you even use the word resurrection in your subtitle, and that is a metaphor that you prefer to the much more common term, reinvention. What is the distinction between the two in your estimation? And why does resurrection apply to you and what happened more than
Well, I think, I really thought of myself, most of the action in the book takes place the last year in my house. And while I definitely made some strides toward recovery, it was really that process of selling my house, sort of having this life review of everything, not only all my possessions, but it was really the first time that I had dealt with the loss of my marriage. I was surprised how much pain I was still in. When I really was sitting with all this stuff, I was blown away that I was in so much pain. So I knew that I really hadn't done the work, because when we're all busy and we're just, consumed with getting through and paying the bills and doing the college applications with the kids and all the stuff we have to do, we sometimes don't even realize how much pain we're still carrying inside. So that really threw me. And so I felt with this whole process of this life review, there was this complete, we also talk about letting go. That's like, it's become sort of like a cliche about letting go. These books are about getting over and letting go. Well, what does that actually mean? What does it mean to let go? And how do you let go? And so I think for me, it was learning where my pain was coming from. Learning that my pain was coming from holding on to this world and everything that was left that I thought was, one, going to keep me safe, was going to keep things from changing, and provide happiness. Well, the world continued to change. My children grew up. I was getting older. My marriage ended. My ex went on to the second marriage and then a third. And it didn't stop change. Change continued to happen. And so when I say resurrection, it really wasn't just like finding another job or whatever. I had to really find out who I was. Who am I in all of this? Because I had been a wife, I wasn't a wife for a long time, but I had been a wife, and that was a real part of me. That was a real defining part of me. I had been a lawyer, but my career as a lawyer was really over, and all these little jobs I was doing, they didn't amount to much. And I didn't really want to do that anyway. My days as a mother were coming to an end. You know, I was about to have a completely empty nest. So for me, it wasn't just, well, what's the next thing that I do? And I don't mean to say reinvention is a bad word. But I think about it more of, well, you know, what am I going to reinvent myself as next? I had to really sort of come back to myself and really kind of be reborn as that strong woman that I had once been many, many, many years ago that I'd sort of forgotten about. And really begin all over again, start all over again. So that's really what it means to me.
Yeah, so much of the way you described it reminded me of being like a young woman, again, fresh out of law school, starting over. One of the gutsiest things you do that I think people, at least I was, just sort of astonished by is that you sold your house and you didn't know where you were going to go next. And you just decided that you would move to a city that you had visited, I believe, just once and knew virtually no one, Savannah, Georgia. And, you know, that's where you live now. And by the way, I think I should mention one of the greatest literary honors that you've received just this year, the legendary Savannah ice cream purveyor Leopold's, as part of the book festival in Savannah, names ice cream flavors after writers, and it named its most popular flavor, chocolate bourbon, after you this year, calling it Savannah Socialite, which I think it gives a pretty good indication of how much your adopted city has, how warmly it has embraced you. So I think that's quite a feather in your cap. But how did you go? How did you make friends? You seem to really have taken to it so incredibly, and that is a scary thing for people.
Well, you know, it's funny because when I first thought about it and when friends thought about me doing this, it seemed like it was so unlike me. But it really wasn't. And that's because I came back to who I really am. And that is a person, I mean, I grew up in a very, very small town, first in my family to go to college. I went to law school. I got a job in New York City. I mean, I've always been, in a way, I don't think I would call it a risk taker, but a person willing to say, gee, what can I do next? Where can I go? I'm going to go see the world. I'm going to go to New York. It's really the kind of person I had always been. So it really wasn't out of character for who I am. It was out of character for the kind of person that I had been for a while, which was a person who was really mired in fear. I was really, really afraid. I mean, my ex had left me. I was afraid I was going to lose my marriage. I was afraid that I was going to lose my kids. I was afraid that I was going to lose my house. And so I held on to all these things for dear life because I was really, really afraid. I was afraid for myself. I was afraid for Beverly, what's going to become of her? And I think once I finally was able to let go of that fear, that's when moving to some place where I didn't know anyone and starting over and just seeing what would happen. I mean, I didn't even know I was going to stay here. I didn't come here with the idea, okay, I'm going to plant roots there. Because actually, when that was the thing that I didn't want to do. I had pulled up all of these roots and I was completely free. I mean, I felt so free for the first time in my life that freedom, things just didn't frighten me. What was there to be afraid of to come to Savannah? And I wanted to take some time off. I was tired of shoveling snow. I was tired of wearing my big parka in New York. I didn't want to wear my Uggs for a while. I wanted to go someplace and drink lemonade and have some nice sunshine and figure out what to do next. And I was lucky enough that I held on to the house, and the house provided some money that I could start over. So ultimately, that fight for the house was really a smart thing for me to do as a woman, to provide for myself financially.
And it gave you the freedom to write.
And it gave me the freedom to write. So it wasn't scary to me. I thought, and a lot of friends said, well, why don't you come visit us? And then people on Facebook said, well, you could come and meet us. And I thought, well, I have options now.
Yeah.
I felt for so long that I had no options. And partly I couldn't leave New York because I was raising the kids. So I really the freedom to travel was not there for me. I could not leave. I could go on a vacation, but I could not leave New York, or else I'd have to give up my kids. I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Should we open it up to the?
Yes, we're getting some questions. I'm sorry, did I interrupt? But
no, I was just.
I've seen there are a lot of questions, so that's great.
Yes, and so there are a couple of people have asked this, so I'll ask this one, and then I'll call on
Sure.
people. A couple of people asked, how did you come up with the title, Disassembly Required?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I remember a writer a long time, oh gosh, this has got to be like 17 years ago, saying to me, the title is really, really important. And I thought, okay, so let me think if I can think of something catchy, and I thought assembly, for some reason, assembling your life or whatever. And I thought, no, it's not. I'm tearing everything down. I'm getting rid of more things. I'm sort of like peeling the onion. So in my mind, I felt that is what I'm doing. I'm disassembling the rest of everything that I've put together, and finding that in that disassembly, I'm finding out where the source of my pain was. And so just naturally, it was like, you hear assembly required. It just was like that word went with disassembly. And my publisher, usually, agents will tell you, publisher's going to take their own title. And I remember thinking and saying to them, when are we going to have the discussion about the title? And they said, oh, we love the title. So I was totally blown away.
Okay, and now I'm going to call on Riri. You have a question? Oh, I unmute Riri. I unmuted you. Uh-oh.
Here I am.
There you are.
I just wanted to know what was the reaction for the ex-husband about being written about, I guess. Or
I have no idea. I don't know. We've had no contact, so I don't really know.
Ever an apology? Oh, I guess no contact. There's the answer.
No.
Thank you.
And we have another question related to that. Amy Rogers, didn't you have something? Yes.
I do. Beverly, it's great to see you and hear you. I'm such a fan, as you know. My question is, since your husband's behavior is such a key part of your story, how did your publisher let you be so truthful? Did you have to get him to sign off on it? Or did you just say to hell with it and write it?
No, I didn't have to get any sign off. Basically, I satisfied them that it was all true. And so, I mean, I'll just tell you, there are other things that I could have written about. There are other things that I could have put in the book that I didn't put in the book. So some people have said, you were very kind. But ultimately, just to put that in context, I wasn't angry anymore. My anger was gone. I didn't need to get back at anybody. This was my story. And so I really put in this book what I felt was necessary to tell my story and how I healed. So I didn't, I actually had some agents say to me, who turned it down, say, you've got to put some more salacious kind of stuff in. It feels wrong to me, and it feels like that I'd be doing that for a marketing purpose rather than being true to the story and how I want to tell the story, being true to my integrity and what I felt was necessary to tell my story.
You found the sweet spot.
Yeah.
You really found the sweet spot.
Well, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have, thank you. We have Marion Morrill. I'm going to unmute you. There you are. You had a comment.
Oh, hi.
Hi. My question, I just started reading the book, and when did you decide, I want to write this? I mean, did it come to you just kind of like all at once, or was it something that was kind of just brewing within you? Or when did you decide, I want to write this book? And was it a cathartic experience? I'm sure it probably was, but when did you decide to write the book?
So let me just give you a little bit of background. I started writing another book probably in 2010, maybe 2011. I wrote an article for the Daily Beast, which was like it went viral. It was like my first big article when actually agents were contacting me and saying, "Are you writing a book?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm started one." So that kind of like got me started. But the book that I was writing was more of focused on the entire backstory. Okay. And then when I had to do so many things with the kids, the house, had to sell the house, I kind of had to put that aside because there just wasn't time to really finish that and market it. And then all of a sudden, my life changed. All of a sudden, the story that I tell in this book is a different story. It's a story about healing. I hadn't even realized when I was writing the first story, which was a story about a woman going to court and trying to save her marriage, blah, blah, that I hadn't healed yet. And so all of this became the story, and probably it was sometime in 2013 that I actually realized this was the book I wanted to write. I had written some of the backstory in this book, some of the scenes for another book that I was thinking about. So I incorporated that material, but this was all fresh material that I wrote starting in 2013. And that's when the light bulb went on. My gosh, I hadn't healed. And I felt so free and so happy, and getting emails from people, as I have for years and years and years, saying, just help me save my marriage. What can I do? I still get emails from people that say, I will never recover. I will never heal. This is never going to end for me. I'm in too much pain. And I realized, yes, you can. If I can do it, you can. And maybe the thing that I can do is I can tell you how I did it. And so I know you had like two questions. Did I answer them both?
You did. Thank you.
And now we have Stephanie has a question about reinvention. So Stephanie, do you want to? Are you there?
Oh, sorry. Mine is, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think it was answered with the other questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my questions were answered. It's just, I haven't read the book yet, but I'm really looking forward to reading it. I've never been through a divorce. I'm still married, but it sounds fascinating. My parents were divorced when I was 8, and I think it was the reverse. And it would be nice to understand a little more about what people go through, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just, before you ask the next question, I have to give a shout out to my Phi Mu sister, Lisa. I just saw her come on. Hi, Lisa.
Let's see, Lisa. Where are you? Wave. There she is. Okay, good.
And there's a little part in my book about a reunion with my sisters right before I sold my house, and she was there.
And so I think, Stephanie, you had asked about what was your reinvention, and I think we got to that because you left and you went to Savannah. And would you say you became a writer, or can you talk about? I guess that's maybe what your question is. How did you become a writer? Is that?
Well, I had actually started writing before my ex left. So I had sort of retired from the law. I thought I had retired. And I was raising the kids, and I wanted to do something part-time. So I took some courses. I wrote a few parenting articles. So I really started, paying my dues like 20 years ago. And then I really didn't know, what am I going to write about? I wrote some parenting articles, and I just was like, oh, what do I have to say? My life is boring. And then life gave me this story. I mean, it just, so I and I loved writing. I mean, I loved writing more than anything. I just absolutely loved doing it. So I just kept at it. I mean, and I really, I had to make time. I had to do other things in order to be able to write. And I basically, I couldn't afford to live in New York. So if I was going to continue to write and be able to get to write a book and get a book out, I had to go somewhere where I could cut my expenses down. And that was, moving to Savannah too, ultimately. But that's been wonderful.
Good, good. And Nancy has a question. Nancy, do you want to ask your question?
Let's see here. Might have already been.
Hi, Nancy.
Can you? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
I can.
Okay, let's see. Go back to where I was. So, you learn a lot through these various crises, and obviously right now we're going through a difficult time. What general skills or ideas can you give to us to get through this difficult time as we move on to the next phase?
Well, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. It's interesting because I think that we think, obviously, this particular thing has never happened. And this particular thing has happened to all of us sort of at the same time, which is kind of unusual, okay? But for me, it's just a realization that it's different, and it may be on a different level with different challenges, but uncertainty is something we live with every single day. And I think that was part of the problem that I had accepting the things that were happening to me, my divorce, and why I was holding on to the past and all the dreams that I'd had and couldn't let them go, is because I thought that they were going to protect me. It's just like holding on to what, you think is never going to change, but everything changes. Every single moment is uncertain. Every single day is uncertain. The month before I launched my book, I had a head-on collision. A car came out of nowhere, ran a red light, hit my car, sent me to the hospital. The month before I launched my book, I almost died. Everything is uncertain. I mean, you can live your life in a way that you're afraid of anything happening, but it's actually, what we're living now is actually where our eyes are being opened to the reality of what life really is. And we're trying to adapt to this new reality, but every single day is uncertain. So for me, yes, it's been hard because writing at home, I like to go out. That's my relief, being able to get out and have dinner with a friend or go to the gym, because I spend so much time at home. So for me, it's hard because I don't have that relief, but I realize that what I'm doing now is just, I'm dealing with the same kind of uncertainty that, permeates every single day of our life. And so if I think about it in those terms, it's a little easier. And I also just wrote an article for NextTribe because I celebrated my birthday last month. And I remember thinking, I'd had plans to go out to dinner with a friend, and then I was on the road with the book. I came home, everything was canceled, no birthday, and I was like, what is going on here? And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I got up the next day, and I thought, well, I'm just going to take it one moment at a time. I'm going to see what happens. And it was an amazing day. I mean, it was a full day. And it's odd to think of it that way. But, I'm aging now. My mother, was barely able to go out the last few years of her life. She was not an unhappy person. She was a very happy person. I hope that I can keep physically well, but none of us know what's going to happen to us. So I feel like this is like, it's all like really good training. I'm like learning some stuff, and I'm not trying to fight it. Before with the divorce and everything else, I was just fighting the change. I was fighting things in life changing. And when I let go of trying to fight the change, yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't try and save your marriage or whatever, but just letting go of all the fight of things that are just going to happen that are natural kind of gives you more energy to deal with the challenges and to look at them in a new way.
That's great. Letting go of the fight. That's a good one. So we have, somebody wrote, and this was she paraphrased Anne Lamott. We were talking about when your husband's reaction, and I thought it was Jenny Booth, you wrote this. If people want you to write nicely about them, they should have behaved better. That's what she said. Paraphrasing Anne Lamott, of course. So we have.
Yes, I love her.
Yes. And so Dana Peck, I'm looking for you, Dana. You have a question. There you are. I'm unmuting you. There you go.
Hi.
Hi, Dana.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can. Oh.
Okay, good. First of all, thank you for the best hour of my day. I'm really grateful.
Oh,
This was fantastic.
thank you.
It's just what the doctor ordered. But my question is, you mentioned earlier that you're not a marketer, and now you're marketing your book. So how does a non-marketer market their book, their first book, I presume, and then does the publisher play a big role?
Publisher doesn't play a big role, no. But that's not, I mean, they've been wonderful. It's just the reality of the way the book world is for most authors. So you basically kind of stumble around and find your way and make contacts and place articles and just, you know, you also have to just be really brave, you know, to like ask for things, to like, you know, not be afraid to say, how about this? Or you have to just be brave. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think I have any, you know, real plan that this has worked or that's worked. I think that things also, a few nice things have kind of just come my way, which I'm really thankful for too.
That's good. Yeah. The whole marketing thing for
Yeah, but Beverly, you went out and found blurbs on your own. I have to say, I've often thought that you could give a little workshop on how to get a lot of momentum going early. I mean, I know you've had a mixed bag because a lot of the book tour got disrupted from this pandemic, but I think you're selling yourself short. I think you've done a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Marketing your book, which pretty much, let's face it, every author has to do now, unless you've got
Right.
a few.
Right. Well, you know what? Maybe I will think about that if we're able to have like seminars, but I guess we can do it online, like the Brady Bunch. You know, I hadn't really.
I was astonished when I saw the kinds of placements you were making and those early blurbs. I mean, people don't get those who've been, you know, around for you know, ages. You know, in publishing circles and that sort of thing. I actually think you've done a phenomenal
Thank you.
job.
Thank you. Well,
you already have somebody saying she wants to sign up for the seminar. So there you
wonderful.
And here we have a
So I have for you.
we have a question from Lisa.
Hi.
Hey, Lisa.
I was reading, you know, ahead. You got me to read a book, Bev. Congratulations. So I'm a scientist. I read a lot of journals and things like that, but I really like, yeah. Anyway, I read your book, and the thing that really resonated with me, and you know, we have in common, is we hold on to things. We hold on to pieces of our lives, and you know, certain things almost to the point where we're keeping a lot of almost hoarding. And because when I touch things, I remember. If I feel like if I give away this certain thing, I will lose that memory or something. And I didn't go through a divorce. I was widowed. It's kind of the same thing. You have a loss. So certain parts of my life, like furniture that's old, I have old furniture that's kind of ratty, should be given away. But it was furniture from when I had a my first husband. So I wondered how you started, like what started the process of like the first aha moment, let me start. I forget it. I think it was in the book, but I don't know. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think this was the first thing that I gave away, but I mean, I knew that I had to go through stuff, and I knew that I had to get rid of stuff. And I had a friend who said, well, let's just get rid of it. And I knew somehow that I had to make peace with getting rid of it, that I had to hold it, I had to think about it, and make peace with it rather than just somebody coming in and clearing it out, because I had to do the work myself of letting it go. But I'll just give you one little, example that is in the book, which was kind of early on. We'd collected a lot of these antiques, this Art Deco furniture, and at one point it was really cool to have Art Deco furniture. And this wasn't like museum quality stuff, but it was nice furniture. And so I was calling antique dealers. Nobody wanted to come even look at it. And I was like, gosh, come on, I got to get some money for some of this stuff. And so I finally got one guy to come, took him through the entire house, okay? And I'm like, what do you want? And he's like, there's nothing here for me. And I'm like, come on, I've got, a 4-story house full of stuff. Take something. He's like, nothing's here. I said, please. I was like freaking out. I thought, how am I ever going to get rid of stuff? And he goes, well, I really like that pink chair. Well, this pink chair, I picked out myself and had it custom made. I loved that pink chair. It wasn't even something that my ex picked out. And I thought, damn, he wants the pink chair. And I said, sold. So he gave me $75 for it. And I knew at that moment, something told me, trust, let it go. You ask him to take something, accept whatever it is that he wants. And when that chair went out, what happened is I thought I was going to have pain, and I didn't. I felt really free, and I started like playing with it. It was like a game to me. Well, let me see what else I can try. And it was totally unexpected. I met people, from Craigslist, and people came through. I met people. It was like I was having this life, and it was freeing. So I would just say, take something and just like try,
Mm-hmm. That's a good advice. Well, good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you, Bev.
Thank you.
So we're about out of time, but I wanted to, I think a lot of the other questions or comments people have put in, I think we got to all the questions. Raise your hand if you feel like you didn't get something you wanted to ask, or if there's anything else. Okay, I think we might be finished. Beverly, do you have a short little something else to read, or
how long do we have? Do we have like 2 minutes?
A couple minutes, yes.
Okay, let me see if I can quickly read something, which was, I'll just give you, throughout my friends were saying, this is going to be great. You can reclaim your life. And I think I talked about this before, and I thought, well, what life do I have? What life can I reclaim? All these things that, I'm a mother, but the kids are leaving. What life am I going to reclaim? So I was, this is a chapter called Reclamation near the end of the book, when I'm going through a lot more things, okay? I plowed through the rest of my keepsakes from the boxes I kept in the trunk, unearthing silly slang books from middle school, my Sunday school attendance pin, an I love you forever card from my high school sweetheart, a couple of photos of me and my best friend from law school. I found one of the college recommendations from the county treasurer I'd worked for several summers. It did me good to stand and watch the people enjoying the splendid, courteous treatment this fine girl extended to them, he wrote. A fine girl, he said a second time, from a fine, happy home. When I reached that phrase, I lost it. More than anything I had aspired to pass on that inheritance to my own 2 fine girls. Those 3 contiguous words, a primary reason I'd fought my divorce. This, above all, was perhaps the hardest attachment to give up. I wondered if it were possible to become dehydrated from crying so much. In the spring, I'd come across clippings from sports columns I'd written for the county newspaper. Now I was deluged with them, including clips from the neighborhood column I'd written about the comings and goings in my town. By today's standards, it was a trivial feature, but it demonstrated the sense of community connectedness I came of age with and the ideals that shaped my life. Seems I'd been writing all my life, first in a more journalistic vein, then transitioning into law. In between, I'd written an independent study paper in college, a mini dissertation of sorts. Then I found brief upon legal brief, which I'd shredded in all those well-regarded treatises. I go on to talk about meeting one of my favorite writers and the fact that she was in town and she knew who I was. And she said, as I turned to go after she signed my book, she said, "I'll be following you." And I remember running into the car, the lingering undercurrent of despondency and exhaustion I'd been struggling against. The closer I came to the house closing had burst. Weeks later, as I neared the bottom of the second box from my trunk, another treasure emerged, my first writing rejection. I thought I'd found it during the cellar cleanout, but my passion for writing had evidenced itself long before that. I had no memory of this earlier occasion, but there it was in my hands, an envelope addressed to me with a letter inside returning a fiction story I'd written at 13. The letter from Ingenue, a magazine for teenage girls, said, "It is not right for us at this time. Rejections typically hit me hard, but when I found that one, I was overjoyed. And to think I hadn't known who I was when the evidence wasn't far away, encircling me inside, waiting even in my trunk. I'd given others the power to make me doubt myself, succumb to hiding myself at times, worried so much about what others thought that I'd neglected to embrace what I thought of myself. Strong, brave, hardworking, fiercely loyal, mother, memory keeper, writer. Woman who had been loved and deserved to be. I was pleased with my bio. In the end, I had my epiphany. I'd been searching for what had not been lost. I was who I had always been. What a relief at last to know it."
Oh my God. That made me teary.
That's great.
Beautiful.
Me too.
We're gonna go, but I'm gonna unmute people. Everybody, hold on a minute, and in case anybody wants to just sing the praises of our wonderful guest. So everybody's unmuted.
Fantastic.
That was fantastic,
Wonderful.
Beverly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
So
so
good.
much.
Really good.
I love you too, Lisa. So nice to see you, Amy, in person.
This was great.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you,
good.
everyone.
And
Yes,
I want to thank
so
everybody.
great.
I also want to thank Lorraine for conducting the interview and kind of bringing out so many wonderful parts of your story. Wonderful, and I think you were inspiring. And who knew that your experience would really apply to in a broader way to what we're going through today. So
Yes.
I appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. This is great. Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
will.
So good to meet you.
I will post it on.
Bye, everybody.
I will
Thank
post
you.
this on YouTube, so you'll get an email about that. Okay.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks
all.
again.
Bye. Bye.
Congratulations.
Bye.
Bye, Bob.